What's going on, guys? Victor here with a brand new video, and I gotta talk about the UFC Fight Night in Vegas. I don't even know which number this is. It could be 20, it could be 25. It is what it is. We've been in and out of Las Vegas, the UFC Apex facility, for what feels like a whole eternity now. And we're going to continue to keep having these fights as long as we're still in this pandemic. But we still got good fights going in and out of the UFC Apex facility, which I really like. Going to talk about the main event going down this Saturday night. The main card starts at 10 p.m. here on the East Coast, 7 p.m. over there on the West Coast. Very good fights that are going on this Saturday. Not the strongest card, but still a good amount of interesting fights that'll be on there. It could be a sneaky good card. Depends on what happens. But I'm here to talk about the former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Robert Whittaker, with the 23-5 record versus the guy that just happens to look like Andy Ruiz, the guy that happens to look like that short, stubby, fat kid from the movie Up, which is a Disney Pixar movie, Kelvin Gastelum with a 17-6 record. So this is going to be a fight that has the potential to be fireworks. Obviously, the last time that Kelvin Gastelum lost was against Jack Hermanson in the first round. Jack Hermanson was able to lock in that ankle, that he had an ankle lock, and that ended up being game over for Kelvin Gastelum. He got too lazy. Kelvin got too lazy. Jack Hermanson was able to get to his legs pretty easily and submit him in the first round until he came back and defeated Ian Heinisch, he's been up and down ever since he's gotten into the AFC via the UFC Dana White's Contender Series. But he's going to be fighting a guy that he was supposed to fight a couple years ago in Australia, the former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Robert Whittaker, who's been on fire lately. The guy hasn't lost ever since his loss to Israel Adesanya. He's been taking out all these guys lately. It's absolutely insane. He took out Darren Till. He took out Jared Cannonier. And his fight with Jared Cannonier was the number one ranked guy versus number two ranked guy. So that was basically a title eliminator match. But he wasn't able to get that title because Israel decided that he wanted to go up and challenge for the UFC light heavyweight championship of the world against Jan Blachowicz, but wasn't able to win that, so now he's going back down. And there are a couple of players in this equation. You've got Marvin Vettori's been on fire, you got Robert Whittaker who's been on fire, and you got Kelvin Gastelum who can take Robert Whittaker's spot if he pulls off the upset. So there's a lot of pieces that are going to be put in play depending on what happens this Saturday night. So I'm just going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of these fighters. And when we talk about Robert Whittaker, we got to talk about the power that he possesses. He's got a nice, straight jab. He was killing Jared Cannonier with the jabs. He kept on hitting it right on the button, right on the spot, right on the target. He always likes to move a lot. He likes to bounce around on his feet, which means that he has a lot of energy, which means that he moves fluidly. He likes to move in and move out, move in and move out. He likes to throw in some combinations as well, and you can't forget the leg kicks. He likes to throw in those high leg kicks, and he was able to crack Jared Cannonier with one of them, had him wobbly, got him to the ground. And there's another thing about Robert Whittaker, which is very underrated. It's his wrestling. He can get people to the ground. He ended up getting Yoel Romero to the ground when they fought 2 times. So his wrestling is very underrated, but it is very powerful, and it's very much utilized whenever he goes into his fights. And when he has someone on the ground, he can keep him there. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, so he is the real deal when it comes to his wrestling, when it comes to his Jiu-Jitsu. He just likes to do the majority of his work on the feet, and he is a very fast individual as well, and he's a very smart fighter when it comes to his fighter IQ. It pretty much just went outside the window when he decided to fight Israel Adesanya, defending his championship. He was kind of going off of Kelvin Gastelum's game plan against Izzy, and it completely backfired on him. That game plan that Kelvin Gastelum had working, that basically hurt Izzy a couple of times during that fight, only matched up with him because of his body style, because of his fighting style. And last time I checked, Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum are 2 different people, 2 different fighters. two different fighters and two different styles of fighting itself, so it was never going to work to begin with, which led to Robert Whittaker getting finished. The last time Robert Whittaker got finished before Israel Adesanya was when he was fighting in the UFC welterweight division, and he was cutting a lot of weight in that welterweight division, and he was just a shell of his new self right now, and he wasn't able to get anything off, anything going in that division. The last guy to knock them out was Wonder Boy Stephen Thompson. And if Wonder Boy knocks you out, then you gotta do something, because Wonder Boy nowadays he's very laid back. He likes to pull out of his punches back and not really knock people out anymore, but he used to when he was a couple years younger. So Robert Whittaker decided to make that jump from welterweight to middleweight, just like Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum joined the UFC as a welterweight, but decided to go up to middleweight because he couldn't make the weight. He had a lot of trouble making the weight. And if we're going to talk about Kelvin Gastelum, we got to talk about his wrestling. His wrestling is his bread and butter. He was able to get in a lot of takedowns against Ian Heinisch. If there's one thing about Kelvin Gastelum, is that he does get himself into very sticky situations, some very ugly situations. Ian Heinisch did have 2 Kimura attempts on Kelvin Gastelum, but Kelvin was able to get out of there. He does tend to get himself out of these sticky situations as well, kind of slips his way through and gets out. He almost got submitted against Israel Adesanya during their title fight, but Kelvin Gastelum has a lot of power. The guy is very sneaky. He's a very calm, cool, and collected individual when it comes to the majority of his fights. He showed it against Israel Adesanya. He showed it against Ian Heinisch. He showed it a little bit against Jack Hermanson, but obviously it kind of backfired against Jack Hermanson. But he's a very calm and cool, collected fighter. He likes to pick his shots a lot, and he's got a very nasty overhand right. So the majority of the people like to overlook Kelvin Gastelum because of his size and his height and his body composure. Obviously, that doesn't matter, because if you have power, you can put anyone out, then you are going to sleep. The last guy that he knocked out was Michael Bisping, and that was in the first round. Hit him with that overhand right, and it was Goodnight Arlene for the former UFC middleweight champion before Robert Whittaker, Michael the Count Bisping. So obviously, Kelvin Gastelum's got some very good wrestling. I believe both of these fighters' wrestlings are definitely going to negate one each other, so it's definitely going to be a fight on the feet. But if anyone's going to get a takedown in this, I think it's going to be Robert Whittaker, because he is the much more powerful individual. He is the smarter individual as well out of these guys. And when it comes to these two, the person that definitely thrives in pressure the most, I gotta say it's Robert Whittaker, because he just eats pressure up for breakfast, no matter what kind of situation he's in, whether it's the fans or the no fans. He likes to thrive no matter where he's at, because he's got a great team behind him. He's never left Australia to train anywhere else. He moved to Australia from New Zealand to start a new life with his family. He moved there at a very young age. He's been there ever since, but he was born in New Zealand. He's a New Zealand-born Australian mixed martial artist. He's never left Australia to train anywhere else. Kelvin Gastelum, he's been basically in California his whole entire life. He's been training out of there. The same thing basically goes for him. He's been living out of California for a very long time. He's been training out of California, hasn't gone anywhere else. He's got a very good team with King's MMA. Rafael Cordell, one of the best coaches in the whole entire world. Same thing with Robert Whittaker's coach as well. 2 geniuses, 2 wizards going to be going at it with their pupils. So it's going to be a very interesting fight. And if I were Robert Whittaker or one of these fighters, you got to utilize the calf kick. If I'm one of these guys, I'm going to have to tell Kelvin Gastelum, utilize the leg kick, because that's what Jared Cannonier was hurting Robert Whittaker the most. Jared Cannonier got 2 leg kicks in there, and it had already impaired some of the movement of Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker wasn't really checking any of those leg kicks, so if I'm Kelvin, check those. If I'm Kelvin, throw those leg kicks at will whenever you get the opportunity, and maybe throw a little bit of feints in there as well to try to set up some of your overhand rights and some combinations. If I'm Bobby Knuckles, then I'm going to keep on moving. Do a lot of things you were doing against Jared Cannonier, but just check the leg kicks. And if, like I said, if Gastelum is going to go into this fight trying to get some takedowns like he did against Ian Hines, because he uses wrestling a lot. He utilizes wrestling a lot. Then be ready to sprawl. Be ready to get that wizard in there. Be ready to try to throw in a knee or a jumping knee or whatever, because he's going to try to go in there and try to take him down. And I believe that Robert Whittaker is going to negate all those takedowns and stay on the feet. He's going to be looking for those high kicks. He might be throwing some low kicks in there depending on what happens, but he's going to keep moving in and out, pumping that jab. And if I'm Kelvin Gastelum, you got to keep the head movement at all time. You got to keep bobbing and weaving left to the right, to the left, to the right, and just use the whole entire body, not just the head itself. You don't want to be a stationary target, because Robert's just going to keep coming in and out with that jab, or with the 1-2, or with the jab and the hook followed by that. So obviously both these fighters are definitely going to have to utilize movement if they don't want to get hit a lot. If there's one fighter that does like to take a lot of damage, it's got to be Kelvin Gastelum. He did take a lot of damage against that fight against Izzy, and then Robert Whittaker does take in a lot of damage if he's fighting those weird fighters, and Kelvin Gastelum is definitely one of those weird fighters as well. But I think it's going to be a chess match between these two individuals. I don't think it's going to be a war. I believe the person with the smarter game plan is definitely going to win. And whoever throws their game plan into the garbage first is definitely going to be the person to lose this matchup, which is very, very important. If I'm Kelvin Gastelum and I want that rematch against Israel Adesanya, the only person in that middleweight division who has hurt Israel Adesanya was Kelvin Gastelum. He hurt him 2 times. He knocked him down in the first round, and then he wobbled him with a very nice high kick. I had no idea that he was able to get those high kicks up there against a tall and lanky individual such as Israel Adesanya, but he was able to. He rocked him, and he didn't pounce on the opportunity the way that I wanted him to, just because of how tired, how fatigued he is. And this is also it as well. Whoever has the better cardio is definitely going to win, because Kelvin Gastelum, don't get me wrong, he does get tired. Robert Whittaker, not so much. You can get him into the trenches and he'll be able to come out. But this is definitely a fight that Kelvin Gastelum is going to want to live or die for, because if he wins, then he's this much closer to getting that title fight. And the guy that's right here in the midst, he's going to be there on Saturday night, is Marvin Vettori. Well, those two individuals fight each other because both of them fight at King's MMA. So a little bit of a weird situation going on between that if Kelvin Gastelum does pull out the win. But I don't know. It's going to be a very, very tall order. If you ask me, I'm going with Bobby Knuckles. I'm going with Robert Whittaker just because he's been looking fantastic lately. He barely took any damage against Jared Cannonier, barely took any damage against Darren Till. He's not training as hard as he used to. He dialed it down a little bit. He's going on a new blueprint, and it's been absolutely magical. And if he pulls off this 3rd win in a row, Marvin Vettori is screwed. He's going to have to sit on the back seat, and Robert Whittaker is going to sit on that front seat, riding his way into the sunset for another title fight against Israel Adesanya, the champion, who will be coming back down to the middleweight division. So I appreciate you guys for watching this video. I want you guys to let me know who's going to win this fight. By what? Is going to be a knockout? Is it going to be a TKO? Is it going to be a decision? For me, I believe it's going to be a decision. I think it's going to full 5 rounds, but I could always be wrong, like I usually am with these predictions. But I believe Bobby Knuckles is going to get it done. If you guys don't disagree with me, if you guys think something else, then put it down in the comments section. If you guys think, do you guys think that the winner of this matchup is going to get a title shot next over Marvin Vettori? Let me know in the comment sections, guys. We need to get some conversations going on in there. Appreciate you guys for watching my videos. As always, stay blessed, stay safe, and I'll see you guys soon in the next video. Later.